This is Net Video at the Cross Media Lab in Singapore. I'm Jason Romney, and we're talking right now to American McGee. American, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
American, you are a mentor here at the Cross Media Lab with an amazing amount of experience in the new media and film space. Can you tell us a bit, firstly, about your background? You gave a profile to the Cross Media Lab yesterday, but for the people who obviously haven't seen that and who are watching you now from all around the world, what are the sort of projects you've been involved with?
Right, so the projects I've been involved with started back in the id days. I got a job at id Software, and while I was there, I was a level designer. I did some coding, sound design, you name it, just kind of worked on a lot of different things, and was there through Doom 2, Quake, and Quake II, and then went on to Electronic Arts. While I was there, I was the creative director of the studio, the worldwide studio out of Redwood Shores, and got to oversee production on a lot of different titles. Most notably was a game called American McGee's Alice. And then after EA, went on to start my own company, which is called the Mauritania Import-Export Company. And I'm the creative director of that company, and we're sort of a IP creation house. So we create stories and then go and take them out as films and games and books and toys and you name it.
Now, American, you have managed to get your name in the title of many of the media properties you've created. How do you go about doing that? Is that because your autorial vision was so much at the center of those projects that everyone just agreed that you could put your name on them?
No, actually, the way that the name in the game came about was, from what I understand, the EA legal department trying to find a way to protect the title of the Alice game. The word Alice by itself wasn't enough for them to go out and create something that they could protect. And so they wanted to come up with a unique enough name that someone else couldn't go and copy it.
Among mad people.
Oh, you can't help that. We're all mad here.
And we bounced around a lot of different ideas for Alice in Nightmare Land and things like that. Ultimately, the marketing department kept coming back to American McGee's Alice. And I actually fought against the concept for a long time. It got to the point that they came to me, EA did, and said that they had decided to take the name out of the title of the game. I went and told the team this to make them sort of feel like they had won some more ownership in the project, and then 1 week later found out that EA decided to put the name back into the title again. So the name in the game thing was not something I did by choice. It wasn't even something that I had planned out. It was sort of foisted upon me, and since then it has become somewhat of a blessing, somewhat of a curse. We can't just drop it because there is now marketing value built into it. But at the same time, I know that there are some people in the industry it sort of rubs the wrong way. So it's a kind of interesting issue.
It must certainly keep you on your toes because the buck definitely stops with you personally if
Right.
people don't like the game as much as winning the accolades when they do.
Right.
You're now here in Singapore talking to people from the film, TV, game industries who are all coming together to think of better ways to create games more profitably. Mm-hmm. What sort of things have you discovered here in Asia that you weren't expecting?
Well, there's some really strange food here. It's been a massive learning experience. I'm having a difficult time answering the question because I didn't come here with expectations. I actually came here with a very open mind because I, in a very real sense, had become tired of the experience of working in the US with the US publishers and developers. And that's not to say that it's not a great system there, that it doesn't make everybody a lot of money, and sure, it has its pluses and minuses, but I personally wasn't experiencing new enough things there. I wasn't being challenged the way I wanted to be challenged. So I came to Asia specifically looking for surprising new things, but also kind of expecting to be surprised. I guess maybe the I don't know, it's such a long list. There's the people issues, or not issues, but there's just the kind of the people things, the culture things that are so different when trying to make a Western game with a Chinese team, for example. I'm actually based in Hong Kong. I've been living there for the past year, and I have a development team that I'm working with there. I do have an office in Los Angeles, so that would be the West Coast, and that office is kept up and running in order to deal with our merchandising, licensing, film-related business, and so it's actually a very important part of how the company works as a media company.
How has living in Hong Kong all this time affected you as a creative artist?
It's been had a tremendous impact on me personally. I mean, outside of work, which of course is going to play into work. It's sort of opened me up to the world at large. It started to make me see things without the sort of Western media shading on them, which I think has made my stories a little more world accessible. They're not as American, I think, as they were before. And it's also opened my eyes about production values and about money values and about a lot of different things like that.
You're now working on the sequel to The Wizard of Oz. Can you say a little about that project?
It's the prequel to The Wizard of Oz. There's no Dorothy, there's no Toto. This is the prehistory of the Oz that everyone knows. And I developed that concept. We sold it as a book. There's a novel version of it now that hasn't been released yet, and toys and a game concept and a film concept. And we sold the film as a trilogy of films to Jerry Bruckheimer and Disney. And so I'm in the process now of writing the first film screenplay based on the original story that I wrote.
The Cross Media Lab that we're now attending here in Singapore is all about mentors like you talking to Singaporean creatives and business entrepreneurs who are creating new games. What sort of projects have you encountered, and what sort of advice have you been giving these Singaporean people?
It's been a pretty wide range of projects. It does seem that the common feature of them all is that they're all utilizing some unique either avenue of distribution or a unique avenue of finance. So we've got a lot of cell phone type games or games that are being delivered via other kind of alternative content devices. The advice I think that a lot of people are getting here is to keep that up. That it's probably going to be more fulfilling, both financially and creatively, to continue working in that space and working in this section of the globe. It's been a very kind of enlightening experience, I think, for everybody.
Operating in Hong Kong, you've undoubtedly had an opportunity to experience the diversity in Asia. For example, the sheer number of languages that need to be accommodated for a property that's going to be distributed across Asia is much higher than in the United States, for example. How have you handled or encountered some of those challenges?
The language issue is interesting. It's amazing how many people in the world speak English, and especially in the developing Asian countries, it's almost a mandate that everyone be able to speak a small amount. So a lot of times you meet quote-unquote foreigners, or people who are local to these countries who are better at English than some people I know back in the States. So it's not that big of an issue, I think, with sort of the majority of Asia, but of course when you go into China, that gets a little bit upside down because there's still such a heavily sort of nationalistic sense going on there, and a lot of pride about the language and about the culture, and so there it's a little bit opposite of the rest of Asia.
American, can you talk a little about the nature of the games that you create? Are they mainly first-person shoot-em-ups, or do they have stories? And if the latter, what kind of stories do you like to tell?
All of our properties, all the properties that I create start with story and start with character and start from a world as a base. And then everything else flows from that. The toys flow from that, the games flow from that. There's no set genre. It's not that I specifically want to work on first person or third person or strategy games. I sort of let that decision be dictated by the property itself.
Have you found it profitable to move to Asia, more so than staying in the United States?
Well, it depends on what scale you measure profitability. For my personal happiness, there's been a tremendous increase in sort of my satisfaction with what I'm doing, both in work and personally. With relation to everything that's going on here and Asia in general, I've been thinking a lot about sort of the concept of the Goliath of American media and how it's become this sort of very bloody arena where these giant gladiators are competing with one another on the same sort of verticals that, just every year seem to get larger marketing budgets and larger focus on spending on production and things like that. And coming to Asia, you see people who are willing to take risks with very little to try to build something really huge. And oftentimes that means that they go into a new space where they're not necessarily competing in the same arena as what's happening in the West. And as a result, they're inventing new things. And for me personally, to come here and to see that, and you see it with everything from electronics to foods to games to you name it, it's like this blossoming of creativity and innovation that's really, really inspiring.
We've heard here at the Cross Media Lab from a number of Singapore and Asian-based companies who are creating games, for example, that are to be played on mobile devices. Mm-hmm. Is that an area of interest for you? Is that somehow uniquely challenging?
It's definitely an area of interest. Anytime we have a distribution device that creates a channel that has less connection to the traditional channel, meaning the large games publishers or film outlets or music outlets, anytime that happens, I feel like it creates a new place for people to go and be rebellious creatively. And it doesn't matter if it's via something on an airplane or if it's something on a cell phone. I think that those are the inlets that creative people need in order to go and try new things.
Now, American, your body of work includes titles like The Sims.
I was at Maxis while The Sims was being made. I was playing it on a daily basis while it was in production. I was in the meetings where they were shaping the concept of this thing, and I was, in there working on it, right? You can look at the Doom and Quake games as an example. Those are pretty well known. While working at it and while working on those titles, I had a specific title, which was level designer, but at the same time, I managed to get involved with the management of the music. I got involved with actually creating sound effects that, got involved with writing code for things like weapons and so forth. So there's, usually when I'm involved with a project, there's a wide sort of general involvement with it. I like to wear a lot of different hats and to see a lot of different aspects of the project while it's coming to life.
You're something of a Renaissance man when it comes to this area, or do you see yourself as being an artist, or do you see yourself as being a software engineer? How would you describe yourself?
There's a quote. There's a couple of quotes. One is is it the genius is knowing how to hide your sources, and I think another one is there was somebody who's quoted as saying that he's not an especially intelligent person, but knows how to surround himself with people who make him look that way. I have to say, if there's any one thing that I do when I'm really involved with a project, it is to take a very general, hands-on approach to it, and to surround myself and the project with people who are immensely talented, much more talented than I am at, basic art and modeling and music and everything else. So I think that, project manager or creative director, that sort of title probably helps to get people to wrap their heads around that involvement.
If we take, for example, your Alice in Wonderland game,
right,
that's clearly taking a strong direction into the macabre.
Right.
Is that something that informs many of the things you've done?
Well, I think there's a fairly constant theme that seems to emerge in a lot of the fairy tale properties that I work on. A fairly consistent theme that emerges in the fairy tale stories, and I think that it's one that's already there, but it's also one that I'm attracted to, and one that I tend to amplify is that of the sort of lone child in a very dangerous world, often orphaned by parents, and it definitely has its roots in my own experience in life. Outside of that, there's always a theme of art-driven, artistically driven or art-driven concepts. A lot of times an idea for a game will start first with the visuals and then go towards the technology. So that seems to be appearing pretty consistently on all of them.
Has creating games somehow enabled you to join a community and find a sense of belonging that might have eluded you?
Well, there's a few other people at the conference today that I've been talking to about this who are authors, and specifically authors that deal with horror and things like that. And I think it's interesting that when you talk to people who write this sort of material, a lot of times you find that what they're actually doing is sort of exercising those internal demons. And I personally think that sort of work, at least for me, is extremely therapeutic. It's very cathartic to be able to get that out and to share it and to sort of push those fears onto other people. It's often really surprising to me, the things that come out on paper, and then thinking about the source of them, and I realized only then that they were sort of these weights that were sitting on my shoulder that once they've been written kind of dissolve and go away. So it's really good.
As an American citizen, or indeed an American called American living in Asia, have the politics of your experience entered into your games at all?
100%. Personally, I think we're living in kind of the disaster decade, and I don't think it's because there's a higher frequency of disasters now than there have been in the past, but I think that these disasters are being transmitted around the world much more rapidly, and that to some extent they are being amplified because, and this might sound like conspiracy theory, but I think that there's a truth to the fact that fear is a very good way to control people. And so, taking that theme, I actually have been recently working on a game called Bad Day LA that is specifically about fear and American fear culture, and it is a spoof, a comedy pointed at sort of deflating that whole concept.
In Bad Day LA, it's a bit like Grand Theft Auto from what you've shown here at the conference. Would that be a correct genre statement?
No, it's pretty far away from Grand Theft Auto. In some ways, it actually is a send-up of video games. But in terms of the particular genre that it fits into, it is a third-person action game. You could say that it has that element in common with Grand Theft Auto, but then it could also have that element in common with a lot of other games. But it's at its core a very unique, actually the only game of its type that I know of right now, which is sort of a chaos management game, meaning that every action inside of the world has an immediate effect upon your status in the world. So if someone is on fire and you allow them to burn down and die, that's a bad against you. If someone is injured and you allow them to die, that's also another bad against you. But performing good counts for you. And so the game is all about helping people, even though the hero is an extremely reluctant guy when it comes to wanting to help anyone but himself. So there's a lot of commentary in the story, and about his actions in the world, about fear culture and about how especially Americans deal with the concept of disaster.
So is your treatment of this area more in line with the tradition of Doom, Quake and Halo, or more in line with the tradition of Myst and Riven?
It's in a place where it's sort of defying categories. It is, in a way, creating a new category of gameplay. Honestly, I've not seen anything like the moment-to-moment action. I don't think that there's really anything like that out there right now. In terms of the kind of the underlying action, the movement through the world, and the mechanics for that, you could say that it's like a Half-Life or any of the kind of narrative-driven games, because it is a very story-driven game. The script for it is over 120 pages of dialogue, which is more than your typical feature film. So it's quite dense when it comes to the narrative.
The world is now seeing the first generation of people who have grown up with games from the beginning of their educational awareness. Does that actually make a difference in your opinion?
I think that you read differently when you read online. I may be, showing my age here, but I think that there's something about, interfacing with a book that has yet to be properly recreated in a digital format. Then again, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing if we're continuing to move towards a more and more technology-reliant society. These are children who are being brought up to fit into an emerging culture. So I think it's inevitable that we who grew up reading books are going to feel some resistance maybe to the idea that everything is going that way. Yeah, the event here has been really eye-opening. It's been really inspiring as well. Somehow, some way, these guys managed to pull together some really brilliant minds in terms of the mentors, and not trying to say anything about myself. And then the people who are here participating are all in themselves also inspiring, because they're all doing something unique. They're all doing it on unique platforms, and they're all. It's interesting. There's not a single person that's here that's walked up and is saying, "I work for established company X." Everyone here seems to be out on their own and being a pioneer. And that's really great, because I think that that's exactly what Asia is about, and I think that that's exactly the kind of movement that we need to get Western game companies and media companies to evolve.
Had you known the mentors who are participating in this cross-media lab here in Singapore before coming here today?
Before I came here, I knew a few of them by reputation mostly. So this was, in a lot of ways, introduction. First-time introduction for some of these people.
American, this is seen by people all over the world. If they want to contact you to discuss a project or whatever, are you comfortable for them to get in touch, and how would they do that?
Everyone can just go to AmericanMcGee.com, and there's a forum there, and everyone can post, and I read those pretty regularly.
American McGee, thank you very much for coming on Net Video today.
Thank you.